The low hum of holographic displays filled the dimly lit underground laboratory. Scattered light from countless screens painted dancing shadows on the stark white walls. In the center of the room, Dr. Lee Sun-Ah stood motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the main display where the Galactic Council meeting played out in cruel clarity. The aliens didn't even try to hide their contempt. Their laughter echoed through the chamber as Earth's carefully prepared membership petition came to an end. Various species, some crystalline, others plasma-based, and a few that looked like shifting clouds of light, all united in their mockery of humanity. Councillor Rakes rose from his crystalline throne, his translucent body catching and refracting light in dazzling patterns. "Order, please," he called out, though his own shoulders shook with barely contained mirth. "We must maintain decorum, even when faced with amusing proposals." Fresh laughter rippled through the chamber. Sun-Ah's fingers dug into her palms, leaving crescent-shaped marks on her skin. 6 years of her life had gone into preparing that petition. 6 years of careful diplomacy, of gathering evidence of human advancement, of proving Earth's readiness to join the galactic community, all dismissed with casual cruelty. These humans, Rex continued, wiping at his faceted eyes, still fumbling with basic quantum mechanics, dare to request membership. They barely understand four-dimensional spacetime, let alone the higher realms where true civilization exists. He spread his crystalline arms wide. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, they might grasp enough to serve as our janitors. The council chamber erupted in fresh peals of laughter. Species that had mastered interstellar travel millennia ago united in their disdain for Earth's primitive civilization. To them, humans were barely more than clever animals, trapped in their limited perception of reality. Behind Sun-Ah, the laboratory door slid open with a soft hiss. Dr. Kim Do-Han entered, carrying a tablet filled with the day's test results. He paused when he saw what she was watching, his usual smile fading. "Turn it off," he said quietly. "You're only torturing yourself." Sun-Ah shook her head. "We need to remember this moment. Every insult, every laugh. It will make our success even sweeter." Do-Han moved to stand beside her, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. At 53, he was the senior physicist on their team, with decades of experience that had earned him respect worldwide. Yet here, in the eyes of the Galactic Council, he was just another primitive human fumbling in the dark. "Look at them," he said, gesturing to the laughing aliens. "So certain of their superiority, so convinced they know everything about reality." He waved his hand, and new holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing complex mathematical equations and simulation results. "They think we're trapped in 3 dimensions, limited by their understanding of physics." Sun-Ah finally allowed herself a small smile. "Let them think that." She walked to the central calculation table, her fingers dancing over the controls. The air filled with shimmering equations, their life's work hidden from the galaxy's prying eyes. Deep beneath the Korean Advanced Physics Institute, their team had discovered something revolutionary. "Today's test results are promising," Do-Han said, projecting new data alongside their existing calculations. "The quantum fluctuations match our predictions perfectly. We're seeing clear evidence of dimensional bleeding." They had discovered that reality wasn't limited to the neat layers the Galactic Council recognized. The dimensions weren't separate at all. They were interconnected, flowing into each other like streams joining a river. And humans, with their primitive minds, had seen patterns that the supposedly advanced species had missed for millennia. "Have you told the others yet?" Sun-Ah asked, studying the new data with intense focus. Do-Han shook his head. "I came straight here. The whole team's gathering in an hour for the full briefing." He paused, watching the council meeting's final moments play out. "Should we inform the government?" "Not yet," Sun-Ah decided. "Let the council think we're beaten. Let them believe their mockery has put us in our place." She straightened up, determination burning in her eyes. "When we're ready, when we can prove everything, we'll show them just how wrong they are about humanity." The holographic display finally winked out, leaving them in the gentle glow of their equations. Somewhere above their underground sanctuary, life went on as usual. People walked the streets of Seoul, unaware that in this hidden laboratory, a team of scientists was about to change humanity's place in the universe. They see us as children, Sana said softly, playing with toys we barely understand. But we've seen something they missed, something they're too arrogant to even consider. She turned to face her colleague and friend. We're going to prove that humanity belongs among the stars, Duhan. And we'll do it by showing them what real dimensional physics looks like. Duhan smiled, the kind of smile that had seen him through countless scientific breakthroughs. They won't know what hit them. Together, they turned back to their work, the equations flowing around them like a digital river. Above ground, the sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in brilliant colors. But deep underground, humanity's future was taking shape, one calculation at a time. The aliens could laugh. They could mock. They could dismiss humanity as primitive and limited. But soon, very soon, they would learn just how wrong they were about the species they had underestimated for so long. 3 months of sleepless nights had led to this moment. Sana stared at her monitor, checking and rechecking the data until her eyes burned. The quantum patterns pulsed on her screen, each wave and particle behaving in ways that defied conventional physics, yet perfectly matched her theoretical predictions. Her hands trembled as she pressed the lab's intercom button. Duhan, I need you in the main lab right now. Her voice wavered with barely contained excitement. Within minutes, Duhan rushed through the door, his lab coat wrinkled from another late night of work. What is it? Did something go wrong with the particle acceleration test? Look, Sana said, pointing to her screen. Look at the quantum signature patterns. They're not random. They're not failing. She paused, taking a deep breath. They're shifting between dimensional planes. Duhan leaned in close, his tired eyes suddenly alert. The data streams showed particles seeming to vanish from their instruments, only to reappear milliseconds later with altered quantum states. But they weren't just disappearing. They were moving in ways that should have been impossible. The folding theory, he whispered. You were right all along. Sana nodded, pulling up more test results. We've been thinking about dimensions all wrong. Everyone, even the Galactic Council, treats them like separate layers. But look here. She highlighted a particular data sequence. The particles aren't just jumping between dimensions. They're flowing through them, finding natural paths we never knew existed. The discovery spread through the scientific community like wildfire, but only among a trusted few. Within days, the highest levels of government had been notified. Within weeks, Project Aurora was born. The project facility sprawled beneath the mountains, far from prying eyes, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. Sana found herself leading a team of the brightest minds Earth had to offer. Dr. Park Jae-yeon arrived from quantum research labs in Busan, barely 30 years old, but already having revolutionized particle physics. Dr. Cho Ta-won came next, his groundbreaking work on electromagnetic fields making him essential to the project's success. The dimensional barriers aren't walls, Sana explained during their first full team meeting. They're more like rivers. And we found the currents. Jae-yeon, young and eager, immediately grasped the implications. If we can map these currents, we could potentially navigate through them. We could move between dimensions at will. Exactly, Sana said. But we need to understand the patterns first. One wrong calculation, and we could scatter our test subjects across multiple dimensional planes. Ta-won finished, his expression serious. We'd need a way to maintain electromagnetic cohesion during any transition. The work consumed them. Days blurred into nights. The facility became their home, their world narrowing to laboratories and test chambers. They failed more times than they succeeded, but each failure taught them something new about the nature of reality. 3 months into the project, they achieved their first major breakthrough. A test probe, no bigger than a coffee cup, successfully shifted between dimensional planes and returned intact. The team gathered around the examination table, staring at the unassuming device that had just rewritten the laws of physics. "It's still warm," Jia noted, running her instruments over the probe. "And look at these readings. It experienced time differently while in transit. These energy signatures, I've never seen anything like them." Sana picked up the probe carefully. "Such a small thing, to carry such enormous implications. We need to scale up the tests. If this works with larger objects, we could build a ship," Duhan said, completing her thought. "A vessel capable of traveling through dimensional currents." The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. The amount of power needed, the precision required, the countless things that could go wrong. But the potential benefits were too great to ignore. Late that night, after most of the team had finally gone home, Sana stood in the test chamber. The probe sat on its platform, looking deceptively ordinary under the harsh laboratory lights. She thought about the Galactic Council, about their laughter and mockery. "They have no idea," she whispered to herself, "no idea what we're capable of." Duhan appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thinking about our friends up there." She accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "They think they know everything about dimensional physics. They're so certain of their superiority." "Pride comes before a fall," Duhan said, sipping his coffee. "And they're about to fall a very long way." The probe sat between them, a silent testament to human ingenuity and determination. Somewhere above them, the Galactic Council continued their grand debates, still laughing at humanity's primitive understanding of the universe. But here, deep underground, a revolution was taking shape. "Tomorrow," Sana said, "we start designing the ship. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do." Duhan smiled. They won't be laughing for much longer. The empty test chamber echoed with possibility, and the future seemed to hum with potential. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first sign of trouble came when the Valorian Empire's ships appeared in the Centauri system. Within hours, the small colony there went dark. No distress signal, no evacuation attempt, just silence. The news reached Earth through encrypted channels, causing emergency meetings in every major government. Sana watched the reports with growing dread. The Valorians had always been aggressive, but this was different. This was conquest, pure and simple. Their crystalline ships moved through space with terrible purpose, targeting the youngest and most vulnerable civilizations first. "Another colony lost," Jia announced, her voice tight with tension as she monitored the galactic news feeds. The Proxima settlement didn't even have time to send a warning. The Project Aurora facility hummed with desperate activity. What had begun as a scientific endeavor now felt like a race against extinction. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, pushing themselves to the limit as reports of Valorian victories continued to pour in. "The Galactic Council has to do something," Taiwan said during one of their brief breaks. "They can't just let this happen." But they did. The Council, for all its supposed power and wisdom, remained paralyzed. The older species argued about protocol and jurisdiction, while the Valorians cut a bloody path through the galaxy. Some even suggested that the natural order was simply asserting itself, strong species dominating the weak. Then came the transmission that changed everything. The massive holographic display in the facility's main hall activated without warning, showing the crystalline face of the Valorian ambassador. His expression, even through his alien features, radiated contempt. "People of Earth," he began, his translated voice filling the chamber. "Your primitive world has attracted the attention of the Valorian Empire. We offer you a simple choice: surrender or extinction. You have 24 hours to decide." The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Sana looked around the room at her team's faces, some frightened, others angry, all determined. "How close are we?" she asked, turning to her core team. "The dimensional drive is almost ready," Taiwan reported, pulling up the latest test results. But we haven't had time to run full safety protocols. Using it now would be incredibly risky. Jai-yun nodded in agreement. One miscalculation, and we could tear apart the fabric of space-time. Or worse, trap ourselves between dimensions forever. 24 hours, Sana said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. That's all we have to perfect what should have taken months. She straightened up, decision made. We don't have a choice. We have to try. The prototype ship sat in its underground hangar, a sleek vessel that represented humanity's greatest achievement and last hope. Its hull gleamed under the harsh lights, covered in complex patterns of electromagnetic fields designed to maintain its integrity during dimensional transition. Run the final calculations again, Sana ordered, moving between workstations. Check every variable. We can't afford a single mistake. Hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. Above ground, the world's governments debated their response to the Valorian ultimatum. Military leaders planned hopeless defense strategies. Civilians, unaware of Project Aurora's existence, prepared for the worst. 15 hours remaining. The facility's AI announced calmly. Core systems are aligned. Ta-One's voice crackled over the intercom. The prototype is ready for testing. Sana exchanged glances with Jai-yun. They had worked together for months, pushing the boundaries of physics, and now everything depended on their success. Begin power-up sequence, Sana commanded. The prototype's engines hummed to life, filling the hangar with a deep vibration that seemed to resonate with reality itself. Dimensional field generators online, Jai-yun reported, her fingers flying over her controls. Field stability at 93% and holding. Around the ship, space itself seemed to ripple and bend. The air shimmered with possibilities as the dimensional drive reached out to touch the barriers between realities. This was the moment of truth. Either they would make history, or they would join the growing list of civilizations erased by Valorian ambition. All systems are go, Ta-One announced. We're ready for the first full-scale test. Sana took a deep breath, feeling the weight of humanity's future on her shoulders. The Valorians thought they had them trapped, helpless before superior technology. They had no idea what humans could achieve when pushed to their limits. Begin the test, she ordered. Let's show them what humanity is really capable of. The prototype's dimensional drive activated, and reality itself held its breath. The underground hangar was a hive of activity as final preparations were made to humanity's greatest achievement. The Hansong rose before them, its silver hull gleaming under the bright lights. Unlike the angular, crystalline ships of the Valorians, the Hansong's design was smooth and organic, its curves following the natural flow of dimensional currents they had discovered. Captain Lee Min-soo walked slowly around the ship, taking in every detail. After 20 years in the Space Force, he had seen his share of impressive vessels. But nothing like this. The Hansong wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's last hope. Beautiful, isn't she? Dr. Lee Sana appeared beside him, her eyes reflecting the same mix of pride and anxiety he felt. The dimensional drive is fully integrated now. Each part of the hull acts as both shield and sensor. How many dimensions can she handle? Min-soo asked, watching engineers make final adjustments to the outer plating. Theoretically, all of them. Sana managed a small smile. But we'll start with 7. That should be enough to surprise our Valorian friends. The crew began arriving in groups of 2 and 3, each handpicked for this mission. Navigation Officer Kim Hana walked in with Engineering Chief Park Dong-il, both already in their flight suits. They were followed by Medical Officer Yoon Mae-kyung and Communications Specialist Kang Hyun-woo. Is this everyone? Min-soo asked, counting heads. Sana nodded. A small crew means less mass to maintain dimensional coherence. Besides, the ship's AI can handle most routine functions. Min-soo gathered his crew in the briefing room adjacent to the hangar. Maps and technical diagrams covered the walls, showing everything from dimensional current patterns to Valorian fleet movements. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. I won't lie to you. Min-soo began, looking at each crew member in turn. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. If we succeed, we save Earth. If we fail, we won't fail, Hannah interrupted, her voice steady despite the weight of their mission. The calculations are solid. The ship is ready. We're ready. Daniel spoke up from his seat. The engineering systems are unlike anything I've ever seen, but they're elegant, simple, even. Dr. Lee and her team thought of everything. Almost everything. Sana corrected him. There are still unknowns. No one has ever navigated through 7 dimensions before. The Valorians can barely handle 4. Mike Young, the medical officer, raised her hand. What about the physiological effects? How will our bodies handle dimensional transition? The ship's fields should protect us, Sana explained. But yes, there will be effects. Disorientation at minimum. Possibly more severe symptoms if we stay too long in higher dimensions. Hyunwoo, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. And communications, will we be able to maintain contact with base? The battle wasn't over yet, but the Zarvuk Empire had been shattered. Their forces scattered, their ships burning in the sky. The victory was humanity's, but it came at a great cost. Earth had paid dearly, losing many brave souls in the fight. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. But in the end, the planet had survived. The final stand had been made, and humanity had proven its strength, its will to survive, and its determination to protect their home. The war was won, but the scars would remain. The cost of survival had been high, but Earth had prevailed, and in the aftermath, the survivors stood together, knowing that they had fought for their future. And they had won. The invaders had been defeated, but the fight for Earth's future would continue. The sound of the battle had finally stopped. The hum of weapons, the roar of explosions, and the crash of destroyed ships were all silent now. The skies above Earth, once filled with smoke and fire, had cleared. The once dark horizon now shone with the first rays of the sun. Earth had survived. Humanity had prevailed. But the victory had come at a tremendous cost. The world was battered and broken, but it was still standing. The future, while uncertain, was once again in the hands of those who had fought so hard to protect it. As the dust settled over the battlefield, the survivors began to emerge from the wreckage. Earth's military forces, though greatly diminished, were still intact. Soldiers who had fought tirelessly, never giving up despite the overwhelming odds, began to regroup. They helped the wounded, tending to those who had been injured in the battle, offering comfort to those who had lost loved ones, and finding hope in the face of the devastation. Earth's leaders gathered to assess the damage and begin planning the next steps. In the wake of the final battle, humanity was forced to come to terms with the destruction that had been wrought upon the planet. Cities lay in ruins, and millions of lives had been lost. The economy was shattered, and much of the world's infrastructure had been destroyed. But despite the loss and suffering, there was a sense of hope, a belief that humanity could rebuild. The fight against the Zarvuk Empire had brought the world together in a way nothing else had. Nations that had once been divided by borders and ideologies had joined forces to fight for survival. And now, as the war was over, the world was ready to begin again. The United Earth Coalition, a group formed during the war to unite the world's military and civilian efforts, was now tasked with leading the planet into a new era. The coalition's leaders understood that the rebuilding process would not be easy. The wounds of war would take time to heal, and the challenges ahead were monumental. But they also understood that the strength of humanity lay in its ability to adapt, to come together, and to rise above adversity. The first priority was to restore order and provide aid to the survivors. Cities that had been destroyed would need to be rebuilt, and those who had lost everything would need food, shelter, and medical assistance. The coalition immediately began coordinating relief efforts, sending supplies to the areas most affected by the conflict. The remaining military forces were deployed to maintain peace, ensuring that the chaos of war did not spiral into anarchy. At the same time, the world's scientists and engineers began working together to rebuild Earth's technological infrastructure. Much of the advanced technology that had been developed to fight the Zarvok invaders had been lost or damaged, but the knowledge and skills that had been gained during the war remained. The humans had learned how to defend themselves against the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever known, and they had gained new insights into the nature of advanced technology. This knowledge would be crucial as Earth's scientists worked to restore the planet's technological capabilities and, in time, advance them even further. The Prometheus weapon, which had been humanity's secret weapon in the fight against the Zarvok Empire, was studied carefully. It had played a crucial role in the final victory, but its potential had not yet been fully realized. The scientists who had designed and built the weapon worked tirelessly to improve it, to make it even more powerful and more reliable. They knew that while the immediate threat of the Zarvok Empire was gone, the universe was vast, and humanity's place in it was still uncertain. They had to be ready for whatever came next. But the Zarvok Empire was not one to be easily defeated. They had made a mistake, underestimating the humans, and now they were determined to correct that mistake. They quickly regrouped, sending new reinforcements from their home planet, and reinforcing their ships with advanced technology. The Zarvoks had learned from their previous encounter, and they were not going to make the same mistake twice. Within hours, the Zarvok fleet began its counterattack. Ships that had been on the defensive were now on the offensive, launching waves of destructive energy beams and powerful missiles toward Earth's remaining forces. The humans had struck first, but the Zarvoks were going to make sure they felt the full force of retaliation. As the first wave of the counterattack arrived, Earth's defense systems scrambled to respond. The cities that had been spared from destruction so far were now in danger. Air defenses went into overdrive as they tried to intercept the incoming missiles. Fighter jets took to the skies, and soldiers on the ground braced themselves for the worst. The sheer scale of the Zarvok counterattack was enough to make even the most seasoned soldiers nervous. It felt as though the entire planet was about to be consumed by the enemy. The Zarvok fleet, now more focused and prepared than ever, unleashed a relentless barrage of energy weapons. The sky above Earth seemed to crackle with the intensity of the attacks. The energy beams rained down from the alien ships, cutting through buildings, trees, and everything in their path. Earth's cities that had once been proud symbols of humanity's progress were now reduced to ruins. The destructive power of the Zarvok Empire was on full display. It seemed as though Earth had no chance. The defenses that had worked so well against the first wave of attacks were no match for the full might of the Zarvok counterattack. With each blast, more and more of Earth's military forces were wiped out. The skies were filled with explosions, and the ground shook beneath the weight of the impact. Humanity's last hope seemed to be slipping away with every passing second. But amid the chaos and destruction, one thing remained clear. The humans were not going to give up. They had faced overwhelming odds before, and they had never backed down. Even in the face of the counterattack, they held on to their resolve. The Prometheus weapon was still in place, still ready to fire. It was humanity's last chance, and they were going to take it. In the underground facility where Prometheus was housed, the team of scientists worked furiously. They knew that the Zarvok counterattack had to be stopped, or the planet would be lost. The weapon had already been used once, but it wasn't enough. The Zarvok fleet was too large, too powerful. They needed more power. They needed something stronger to turn the tide of battle once again. The scientists had a plan. It wasn't without risk, but it was their only chance to stop the counterattack. They would overload the reactor that powered Prometheus, pushing it beyond its limits to fire a devastating blast of energy. The weapon would be more powerful than ever, strong enough to take down the entire Zarvok fleet in one shot. But if they pushed the reactor too far, it could destroy the weapon and everything around it. It was a gamble, a risk that had to be taken. The countdown began. The scientists, who had worked tirelessly on this project for years, knew they were on the verge of something monumental. They had no illusions about what was at stake. If they succeeded, They would stop the Zarvuk counterattack and buy humanity more time. If they failed, Earth's chances of survival would be gone. As the seconds ticked away, the tension in the room grew unbearable. The scientists' fingers danced across the controls, inputting the final commands that would initiate the reactor overload. The hum of the fusion reactor grew louder, its energy increasing exponentially as it charged up. Outside, the battle raged on. The Zarvuk fleet continued its assault, its ships tearing into Earth's defenses, leaving devastation in their wake. But the humans held their ground, fighting with everything they had, waiting for the moment when Prometheus would unleash its final devastating blast. Finally, the moment arrived. The reactor reached its maximum energy capacity. With a final push, the weapons systems aligned, and the Prometheus cannon powered up. The room was filled with a deafening hum as the weapon prepared to fire. Outside, the sky was dark with smoke, the air thick with the sound of destruction. The entire world seemed to hold its breath as the countdown for the blast reached its final seconds. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The weapon unleashed its power. A massive beam of concentrated energy shot out from Prometheus, cutting through the air like a bolt of lightning. The sheer force of the beam was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It tore through the atmosphere, traveling at the speed of light, heading straight for the Zarvuk fleet. The energy beam struck the lid ship with an explosive force that sent shockwaves through the air. The ship's shields, already weakened by previous attacks, failed to hold up under the blast. The beam cut through the hull like a hot knife through butter, tearing the ship apart from the inside. But the blast didn't stop there. It continued, traveling from ship to ship, hitting one Zarvuk vessel after another. The massive fleet that had once seemed invincible was now crumbling under the power of humanity's secret weapon. The Zarvuk ships, caught off guard and unable to react in time, were no match for the sheer force of the Prometheus blast. They exploded one by one, their shields failing, their systems overloaded, and their power sources destabilizing. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. A message to the Zarvuk Empire that Earth would not be conquered. A message that humanity had learned, adapted, and fought back in ways that no one had expected. The first strike had shown that the Zarvuk fleet could be hurt. The counterattack had proven that the humans were resilient. And now, with the power of Prometheus unleashed, humanity had struck a blow that the Zarvuk Empire would never forget. As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, the skies above Earth were filled with the wreckage of the Zarvuk fleet. The once mighty invaders had been brought to their knees. The balance of power had shifted, and for the first time since the invasion began, Earth had the upper hand. But the battle was far from over. The Zarvuk Empire was wounded, but it was not yet defeated. And as the humans looked to the horizon, they knew that the final battle for Earth was still ahead. But for now, they had won a crucial victory. The counterattack had been stopped, and humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. The victory over the Zarvuk fleet, made possible by the devastating power of Prometheus, was only temporary. While the invaders had been crippled by the surprise counterattack, Earth's soldiers and scientists knew that this was not the end. The Zarvuk Empire, wounded but far from defeated, was already regrouping. There was no time to rest, no time to celebrate the momentary peace. The final battle for Earth was coming, and everyone knew it. It would be the moment that would decide whether humanity would survive or fall under the rule of the invaders. Humanity, however, was not giving up. Not now, not ever. In the aftermath of the Zarvuk fleet's destruction, Earth's leaders convened. Military strategists, scientists, and political figures all gathered, knowing that this would be their last chance to make a stand. Their options were limited, but there was one thing they knew for certain. They would not go down without a fight. Earth's resistance had already proven that it could stand up to the seemingly invincible Zarvuk Empire. But now, they would need everything they had. Every last ounce of strength, every weapon, every strategy, to push back the invaders once and for all. The humans had been fighting for months, enduring destruction, suffering, and losses. Entire cities had been obliterated, millions of people had been killed, and the world was in chaos. But through all the pain and destruction, Earth had become something more than just a planet under attack. It had become a symbol of resistance, of unity in the face of overwhelming odds. No longer were the countries of the world divided by borders and ideologies. In the face of the Zarvok invasion, Earth had united. People from all walks of life, from every corner of the globe, had put aside their differences and come together to fight for survival. It was this unity, this shared determination, that would be the key to humanity's final stand. As the remaining Zarvok ships regrouped, Earth's leaders knew they had to strike quickly. If the Zarvoks managed to recover fully, they would be unstoppable. The invaders had technology that far outmatched anything humanity had, but now they were weakened, and that was their chance. The humans couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. The Prometheus weapon had already been used once, and it could be used again, but the Zarvok fleet was vast. One weapon would not be enough to win the war. The humans would need something more, something decisive. A plan was quickly put into motion. The key to victory lay in finding the Zarvok's flagship, the heart of their entire fleet. This was where the core of their leadership resided. Destroying the flagship would destabilize the entire Zarvok operation, throwing them into disarray. It would be the strike that would bring the Empire to its knees. But finding the flagship wouldn't be easy. The Zarvok had learned from their previous losses and had scattered their forces, hiding their flagship among the many warships. The human forces would have to track it down and hit it with everything they had, all in one final push. The preparation for this last-ditch effort was intense. Earth's forces gathered the most powerful weapons they had left. They sent the best of their soldiers to the front lines and prepared the remaining fighter jets, missiles, and spacecraft. Earth's military had been decimated, but the humans still had the will to fight. The most dangerous missions were reserved for the bravest soldiers, the ones who volunteered for the most perilous tasks. Every soldier knew the stakes. This wasn't just a fight for victory. It was a fight for survival. The scientists, meanwhile, worked furiously to enhance the Prometheus weapon, ensuring that it could be used once more, but with even greater destructive power. They modified the reactor, added new components, and refined the targeting systems. This time, Prometheus wasn't just going to destroy a few ships, it was going to take down the flagship. The weapon would need to be perfect, and the countdown began. The pressure was enormous. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. People all over the world watched in suspense, their eyes glued to the screens as the battle preparations continued. The world was holding its breath, hoping that the humans would succeed. But everyone knew that the odds were still against them. The Zarvok Empire was vast, and though they had suffered losses, they still had overwhelming numbers. Earth's resistance was small in comparison. Finally, the day arrived. The final battle was set to begin. The skies above Earth were filled with tension. Earth's forces had launched their most daring assault yet, hoping to strike first before the Zarvok could launch their retaliation. The Prometheus weapon was ready, and the soldiers were in position. They had one shot at this. If they failed, it would be the end of humanity. If they succeeded, it would mark the beginning of a new era. The battle started with a massive clash. The remaining Zarvok ships, though damaged, fought fiercely, retaliating with everything they had. The skies above Earth were a battlefield, filled with explosions and beams of energy cutting through the air. Fighter jets and missiles launched into the fray, aiming to penetrate the defenses of the Zarvok ships. The Earth trembled beneath the impact of every blast, and the sound of destruction filled the air. The battle seemed endless, as the human forces fought desperately, trying to gain ground. The Zarvok retaliated with their devastating energy weapons, tearing apart Earth's remaining defenses. Entire military bases were wiped out, entire cities burned to the ground. The Prometheus weapon had been fired again, its energy beam cutting through several enemy ships. But it wasn't enough. the flagship still remained hidden among the chaos. For hours, the battle raged on. But humanity's resolve did not waver. The soldiers fought with everything they had, pushing forward, even as the battle seemed to turn in the Zarvok's favor. The human forces had taken heavy losses, but they knew they had to keep going. This was their only chance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the breakthrough came. The flagship was located. It had been hidden in the midst of the warships, but thanks to the combined efforts of Earth's intelligence and military forces, it had been found. The final strike had to happen now, and Earth's forces launched everything they had at the flagship. Fighter jets sped toward the ship, unleashing everything in their arsenal. The Prometheus weapon powered up, its energy building to unprecedented levels. The world held its breath as the beam of concentrated energy was fired, streaking through the sky and striking the flagship with a force that shook the very core of the planet. The energy beam hit the flagship squarely in the center, tearing through its shields and cutting deep into its core. The flagship shuddered as it was consumed by the blast. The shockwave was immense, and the destruction was overwhelming. The Zarvok fleet, unable to withstand the loss of their central command, began to disintegrate. Ships exploded in the air, and the once proud invaders fell apart.